Introducing NASM One, NASM's ultimate membership program. Unlock access to everything your fitness career needs to succeed. Unlimited CEUs, free courses, access to our premium app, and exclusive discounts, all for $35 a month. NASM One is best-in-class tools, cutting-edge certifications, confidence in your craft, and everything you do as a personal trainer made easy, so we can achieve our greatest goals together as one.
Welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller, and today I have a very special guest. His name is James Porter. He is the CEO of Stress Stop, and he's here with us to talk about stress, but more importantly, kind of having a model to help mitigate and manage stress. And I don't know if James is going to mention having pets, but my Bodhi is behind me. Can you see him if you're watching? He's 4 years old today. He is one of the best ways that I manage stress. So James, I'm going to have you come in and introduce yourself and let's talk about stress.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I totally love the idea that you have your cat handy. I've noticed that when you do yoga online, when one does it, it's always a cat in the background walking into the frame, and people seem to love their cats. I had a cat for years. Now, does your cat purr when you pet it?
He does. Well, it's actually Bodhi is my dog who's behind me, but I do have a cat too. So
I'm sorry. Well, anyway, for some reason I thought that was a cat. Maybe I saw the cat before. Anyway, when a cat purrs, it kind of brings you into the present moment. So we'll talk about that later.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, no, I have a cat too. They both sleep with me at night. So, there's that too. That's good for sleep and bad for sleep all at the same time. So, James, tell us a little bit about you. First, I want to tell everybody how you and I met. So, James and I both spoke at a conference for certified employee assistance counselors. And James has this, like I mentioned, an amazing business called Stress Stop, where he helps all of us manage stress more effectively. And James, I've heard you speak before. I think that all of the things that you share, you're a good speaker. It's always interesting to listen and learn from you. So tell everybody a little bit about what you do.
Well, my business is mostly about delivering a web platform to corporations, hospitals, government agencies, military bases that teach people about stress management, resilience, mindfulness, meditation. It's all there online. It's similar to other apps that are out there like Calm or and Headspace, but it's specifically for businesses. So it's everything on there is stuff that you can actually do while you're at work. For example, there's 14 different 2-minute yoga routines you can do sitting. They're not really routines. They're just it's chair yoga, but shortened up so that you can do different asanas while you're sitting in a chair. So when we do relaxation videos, we make them short. Everything's short so that in the span of just a little 5-minute break, you can really get away and do something that really helps you lower stress and practice mindfulness.
Yeah. Well, I think that's key because I think that all of us want these short, action-oriented steps in the moment because stress is just a part of life. I think stress is always going to be a part of our lives, but it's so much about perception and being able to recognize what's causing our stress and then have, like I said, these kind of things that we can do in the moment to kind of drive down those difficult feelings that hijack our emotions and feelings. And then it's hard to concentrate. So I think that's key is just a couple minutes here, a couple minutes there. But you talk about having a model for stress, a 6-step model. And I'm hoping we can kind of walk through that and just deep dive right in. And so tell me in your model, what is the first step? How do you get people just even recognizing what stress is?
I call step 1 raising awareness or connecting the dots between your symptoms of stress and your sources of stress. I think a lot of people just walk through life experiencing stress, and they never take the time to zero in on where it's actually coming from.
So the whole awareness piece is like, it's almost like people kind of go through the motions, right? Like maybe they're not even recognizing that they're stressed, or they're not even recognizing what the symptoms are. Like maybe they feel agitated or angry, or they feel like all they want to do is sleep, and they're not recognizing that it's driven by stress. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially what I'm really saying is that raising awareness, I'd say, is the most broad of all the steps that I have in the 6-step model. So it could include just learning about stress management, which is so that's raising awareness about, and if you don't have reasons why you want to manage stress, like health reasons, for example, like knowing all the health reasons why you want to manage stress. If you don't know those, all the health benefits of managing stress, you're not going to stick with the program and make it through to a place where you really feel like you have your stress in control.
I think that's a really good point, because I think that a lot of times, unless you really recognize like, why would, how is stress impacting me? It's kind of like stress is almost glamorized in our society. Like if you're stressed, then you must be doing something right. But if people actually understand what stress does to them physiologically, and they understand how it affects their emotions, I feel like they would be more inspired to be like, no, stress is not a cool thing. And it's not just this bare necessity in life. It's like, yes, we are going to experience stress, but it's kind of how we manage it that counts. So
Let me
go.
give you an example of something that I find absolutely remarkable. Something called white coat hypertension. This is something everybody should know about. Is that when you go see a doctor, and this is actually a common term that doctors are aware of, but people generally don't know about it. Your blood pressure goes up because you get nervous. They pull out that cuff, it starts to contract on your arm, and your blood pressure goes up. Now, any good doctor will take your blood pressure and then see that it's high and say, well, we'll come back and we'll do it. You're going to be here for 10 minutes, so we'll do it again in a little while. They won't tell you about white coat hypertension. Now, what I've learned to do, because I got a couple of high readings and they were starting to prescribe blood pressure medication, is that I take a few deep breaths when I sit down on the doctor's table. And those deep breaths really help. I never have high blood pressure readings anymore. They're always right in line where they should be.
Yeah. Well, and that's so true. It's kind of like any big thing, like right before you go in for a job interview, or right before you go in for a test. It's kind of those key steps that you take before you go into that, what is already going to be a stressful event that matters the most. So I think that's a great example, because I think we all get that. I know I get that when I go in, and I also get the whole, oh my gosh, I hope I remember to ask all the questions that I want to ask. So after they become aware of kind of like the symptoms, like, oh, my blood pressure goes up, or I start to sweat, or I get all shaky, what do you tell them next then? What's kind of that model for reducing the stress?
So step 2 is problem solving. And, a lot of people go around with this. Well, the way I like to picture it is, it's like you're carrying your problems over your head, like they were in a basket. And you say, oh, I've got so much stress and so many problems. And people say, well, let me help you figure this out. And no, I don't, I don't need any help. There's no helping me with all my stress. And what I like to tell people is, if you took this basket down and looked at it, you'd see inside that there were garden variety problems that could be easily solved. We don't break our stress down into individual problems. The word stress is almost like almost like a curtain that keeps you from understanding exactly what it is that you need to deal with in order to move through this, let's call it a crisis that you're experiencing. So what I tell people is, problem solving can move you through that crisis. And the simplest advice that I give people is, and hopefully people will do this today, is go home and make a list of your top 10 sources of stress. Okay. You don't have to take more than 5 or 10 minutes to do. Top 10, whatever comes to mind. And I guarantee you, by tomorrow morning, you'll have solutions for 30% of what's on that list. And that's taking the basket down, looking inside of it, seeing what the exact stressors are, and just by identifying them, you're going to start to solve them.
Yeah. Well, and I think you and I both have the same mentality of focused on the solution, not the problem. And we've talked about the same things. I taught stress to university students. I still teach stress in presentations, and you have made a living off of helping people manage it. And it is about focusing on solutions. So it's about kind of looking at stress as, yes, it is a problem, but it's not a problem that I can't solve. And also, it reminds me of, like, I always tell people, I don't necessarily agree with when someone says I had a bad day. I'm like, a bad day is full of many, many, many moments. We don't generally have a bad day. We have some things that happen in our day that aren't so wonderful. And then we have some things that happen in our day that are actually kind of amazing. But our brain tends to hold on to the things that weren't so wonderful. So to your point, if you just made a list of what's causing you stress, you could start to come up with solutions, and you wouldn't just be like, oh, my whole life is terrible right now, where it's like just a big basket of ickiness, when it's really not. It's generally a few things that are key drivers to people feeling stress. Don't you think?
Yes. And I always tell people, shift your focus forward from being problem oriented. And I think I mentioned to you this point the last time we spoke, which is stress tends to hit us by surprise. And when you discover that your transmission is going to cost $5,000 to repair, it's like, oh my goodness, what? I can't believe it. How am I ever going to pay for this? And then, you focus on what is the solution to this problem? And once you focus on the solution to the problem, your stress will immediately start to diminish.
Yeah. Well, because you're focusing on something you have positive control over. The problem itself isn't something you have positive control over, but you do have kind of some control over how you go ahead and resolve it. So they've gone into the awareness. They kind of know, what is it that causes me stress, and what do I do when I'm stressed? And then they kind of start to look for some solutions. What do they do after that? What do you suggest to your clients that they do? What's step 3?
So in order to get to step 3, we need to acknowledge the fact that a lot of times in step 2, you're done. You've come up with a solution. Your stress for that particular issue is over with. But for problems that can't be solved so easily, that's where we go through steps 3 through 6. So step 3 is cognitive restructuring. And changing the way, understanding the role that thinking plays in every single stressful event you experience. So the way I try to define this or explain it is that when you're, let's say, driving in your car and you see that you're stuck in traffic, and your thoughts tend to exaggerate the severity of the event. So it's like, this is going to take forever to clear. Or let's say your boss, says an unkind word that normally does. The boss you don't have a toxic boss. It's just the boss slips up, and you say, oh, I've got the world's worst boss. And maybe we're critical of ourselves and say, oh, I'm going to be any good at this. This kinds of thinking, what Albert Ellis, who really was one of the founders of cognitive behavioral therapy, like to call stinking thinking, gets us into a whole load of stress. So once we understand the role that thinking plays in every single stressful event that happens to us, in other words, we're interpreting what's happening to us. We're not often seeing things the way they really are. We're interpreting them, and we tend to see things negatively. My wife showed me a cartoon yesterday. It said, you tested positive for negativity. And so that's what you want to be aware of in this situation.
That's a good one. You tested positive for negativity. Well, that whole cognitive restructuring is key. And I think it was Albert Ellis who also talked about masturbating. I must do this. I must do that. I'm putting all these expectations on ourselves. But the thing is that it is the way that we look at situations. It's our own perception that either drives up or drives down stress. And so it does help to have somebody too, I think, come in and listen to you talk about what's going on and give you some perspective, because sometimes that cognitive restructuring, when you're in the heart of a really difficult situation, people, it's hard to pull ourselves out and be like, oh, I'm going to look at this through a longer lens. But absolutely, mindset and the way that we're looking at it makes all the difference. But James, I want to reintroduce you. So my name is Angie. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body. And I'm talking to James Porter, and we're talking about a 6-step model to stop stress. So we know that stress is part of life. We know that it's perception driven, but when it comes your way, because it always does, how do we then manage it in a very kind of systematic way? So James has talked about being aware of the symptoms, problem solving, restructuring the way that we look at things. And then what's your next step? What do you recommend to your clients?
So I thought it was brilliant that you mentioned the fact that sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you can't do cognitive restructuring. You can't change your thinking on the fly. That Albert Ellis would have told you, if he was still alive, that all you have to do is change your interpretation, and when it's overly negative, you just try to make it more accurate. You're not trying to invoke positive thinking here. You're just trying to see the situation as it really is. But I've been in that situation where you really, no matter how hard you try, you can't do cognitive restructuring. And that's where mindfulness comes to the rescue. Now, mindfulness is a whole philosophy of life. There's mindfulness meditation, which is a certain brand of meditation. But mindfulness in and of itself is really understanding the therapeutic value of the present moment and kind of realizing that your perception is skewed, and it just is what it is. And sometimes one of the most profound things I ever learned about mindfulness is that when you can't accept what's happening to you, and that would be like rational cognitive behavioral therapy would say, you just have to accept what's happening to you. Well, when you can't, in mindfulness, you can take one more step back and say, well, I accept the fact that I can't accept it. And mindfulness is actually brilliant that way. I just love that. So the key learning point, or the takeaway that I want everybody to have for step 4, is understanding the therapeutic value of the present moment. And when you are anxious, when you're worried, nervous, you're usually leaving the present moment and going off into the future. And the reason I brought up a cat at the beginning of this program was that when I would pet my cat, he would start to purr, and that would bring, animals are always in the present moment, okay? And so they bring you in there with them. And it's like, oh, okay. And a brilliant thing I learned from a guy named Ron Siegel, is a Harvard professor and written several books about mindfulness, is to ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? Tomorrow I may have to go to the dentist or the doctor or put on a program that in front of 200 people, but right now I'm totally fine. So ask yourself, how am I doing right now? And realize that it's having left the present moment that it's made you anxious, and gone into the future, or having gone into the past. Typically that can make us angry and frustrated when we think about things that have already happened and can't possibly be changed, that we can get ourselves worked up over something that is gone and done. And so in this present moment, there's absolute solace, and it's a place where we can live much more gracefully than when we're constantly leaving it. And we don't realize when we're leaving it. Oftentimes we don't realize that our mind is just drifted off. And that's why we practice mindfulness meditation, is to practice staying in the present moment. And you can do it very simply by watching every in-breath, every out-breath, and then the gap between the out-breath and the next in-breath. So that is a classic mindfulness meditation exercise that anybody can do and learn. You've already learned it. So if you want to do TM, you're going to have to spend $1,000 and take a course. But I just taught you how to do mindfulness meditation in 1 minute.
Well, it's true. Just checking in, where am I now? How am I feeling now? This might be in the future. That might be in the past. I was just talking to my husband last night, and I said, I'm listening to David Hawkins' book, Letting Go, The Path of Surrender. and it's such a powerful book. And I'm at the beginning. I think I'm gonna have to do a whole podcast episode on it. But he's talking about kind of one of the things that you mentioned, where a lot of times we bring up situations from the past. Like I've been in that situation where a friend asks me about, hey, I heard such and such. And I'm like, oh, I don't even want to get started because I'll get upset all over again. Sure enough, I, take the bait, I tell the story, and the next thing you know, it's like it just happened 2 minutes ago. And that's the thing about going back or going forward. We sort of get sidetracked, and then no wonder we're stressed all the time, because we've already got today's present moment, and then we're wrapped up in yesterday and tomorrow, and oh my gosh. So I think, to your point, it's about constantly checking in and just saying, where am I today? Where do I have positive control today? And what steps can I take today to make today as good as it can be? Right. And then
Yeah.
do that every day, one day at a time.
That's a classic mindfulness kind of thing to say.
Yeah. So I know you talk about resilience, and I know that is your next step. I sort of gave it away, but I'm curious because everyone has a different perspective on resilience and how to build resilience and why it matters. What is your take on resilience? Because to me, it's like those shoes that help you bounce back, right? And just anything that helps you to get knocked down on your feet or get knocked down on your bum and then get back up again. What is it that drives resilience in humans?
Yeah, well, one thing we have to acknowledge is that some people are just born more resilient than others. So I had a neighbor for years who was an airline pilot and commercial airline pilot. And this guy, nothing ever fazed him. He just as calm as he could be. And I think that's kind of like the right stuff, right? He was kind of born that way. He's 80 years old, and I just love hanging out with this guy because it's great to be around people who are born that way. Now, for me, I've had to learn how to be resilient and realize that it doesn't come naturally to me. So for me, and I did this morning, I try to do it every morning. I have about an hour routine. Now, I realize that if you don't have anything in place, an hour is going to seem like a heck of a long time. But for me, I have an hour routine where I do about 10 minutes of weightlifting. I do 20 minutes of yoga, sometimes a half an hour, and then a little, I guess they call it a HIIT routine. I'm not even aware of kind of this exercise stuff, but in half an hour, I'm sweaty. So it's really about an hour and 10 minutes. Now, that if I do that routine every day, it's as one of the people that I love, and I'm blanking on her name right now. She is a behavioral change specialist, works at the University of Michigan. She says it's not about the half an hour a day you spend exercising or doing yoga or whatever it is. It's about feeling good and sleeping better the other 23 and a half hours a day. So that's what I think of as a resilience routine. Now, I can do a resilience routine. I don't know how much time we have, but I can create a resilience routine that I think would help people feel good for at least a few hours in about 5 minutes. So that's a good place to start is to find something. And my resilience routine consists of about a minute and a half of deep breathing, followed by a minute and a half of progressive muscle relaxation, followed by a minute of body scan, and then another minute of mindfulness meditation. And usually after that amount of time, I can have people in the room feeling pretty relaxed. So if you have nothing in place, that would be some place where you could start to create a resilience routine. And the last thing I want to say about resilience is typically people who hear me talk, at least for the first 20 years that I was doing talks, I think they'd say, oh yeah, I'm going to go and I'm going to maybe do something like that the next time I have a stressful day. A resilience routine is something you want to do every day, and then it becomes proactive. Because instead of doing stress management like you'd put on a Band-Aid, over a cut, or a Band-Aid after the end of a bad day, I want people to do this routine, which you're going to grow from maybe just 5 minutes up to, at some point, probably an hour a day, because you'll love doing this and you'll love how your body feels and you'll love feeling resilient. Like we were having issues typical technical issues only moments ago. And yet, I came on, I was totally relaxed because my body feels relaxed. And that's what I think it means to be resilient. Your body feels relaxed and you are relaxed. Somewhere I read what your body feels, the mind will follow. And I really believe that. And I think that is what a resilience routine is for whatever it is, even if it's listening to music or whatever makes you feel. I watched a great movie yesterday and I was in such a good mood. It's called American Fiction. It just came out. I went to the movie theater. I took the day off and I came out of that movie theater in such a great mood. Obviously I can't go and watch a 2-hour movie every day, but there are a lot of different things that can work to help you create a resilience routine.
Well, and I think your key word is routine. I think the
Yes.
key word is
Yes.
routine, is consistency, because I always say that the number one thing that I think builds trust is consistency. People showing up the same way, people being predictable in their moods and behaviors. And I think that such resilience in managing stress is the same thing as routine. Routine means that we feel like, again, we have positive control. We know that this is part of our day. We don't know what's going to come our way, but we know we have a set routine to help us build strength mentally, emotionally, physically. And that helps us counter whatever these obstacles are that come in. So I like the idea of routine. I think it's huge. So after you get to resilience, what's your last step then?
Well, my last step is, sometimes I say it should be the first step. It's social support, because I maintain that social support is the most important method for managing stress, and it's pretty easy for you to prove to yourself. I always say this, all the stuff I always say, is think of the most difficult times in your life. Whether it's a breakup or a financial crisis or a health crisis. What is it that gets you through those very difficult times? Well, it doesn't take long to realize that, it's the help of friends, family, loved ones, support groups, counselors, doctors. It's people that help you get through the worst times in life. And so I want people, when they're thinking about this sixth step, to be thinking about building their support network. Now, there's two ways you can go about doing this. Well, obviously, there's the way of just finding support online or looking up a counselor on Google or wherever it is you look things up. But the other way, the less obvious way, is to give social support, to build your social support network by giving it. And that, people don't realize, is just as satisfying. It's just as helpful as getting it, because dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals that we all kind of are, just make us feel great inside, are the things that are released when you give social support. So whenever you have the opportunity to give social support, I always say, absolutely should do it. And I love talking to people when I go for a walk, and I'll just say to somebody, "Oh, I love your dog. Your dog is so cute." And what kind of dog is it? And you can engage in social interactions. This is what I did during the pandemic. Every day I went for a walk, and because I was kind of cooped up inside my house for at least 6 months, it was great to get out and just have interactions with people that I didn't even know. And that was one way in which I could use this step 6 to, even in a situation where you're not really getting much social support. So that, hopefully I explained that. Social support is the easiest and maybe the most complex of all the 6 steps.
I agree with you. I think that so many times their social system changes, whether it's because they move or they switch jobs or whatever it might be. I know I have 4 siblings, and my sisters were always my go-to people. And a few of them, actually 3 out of 4, are struggling with their own health issues right now. And so me turning to them is, that's not where I want to go right now. And even recently I've been thinking, gosh, just rebuilding this social network, and it constantly changes. And I mentioned that to those who are listening, because I think it's common that sometimes you have a social system or a system of support, And then all of a sudden it feels like you don't, because it has to change. We've moved 5 times. My social support system has to change. Some of it stays the same, but I always want local people as well as friends and family who are far away. But I also love that you mentioned the volunteerism and kind of the making a difference, because for me, teaching stress for 5 years was the best time in my life to help me manage stress. And so, whether it's through a job or whether it's through you volunteering, I think that if you can give to others and you can see the benefit that you're offering to them, to your point, it's a benefit to you as well. The more we help others, the more we help ourselves. So, I love that you mentioned that. I think that's key. And it's volunteering is free. So, what better way to feel good about yourself than to help other people feel good about themselves? So, James, before we go, I really appreciate you coming on. Will you do me a favor and just name those 6 steps again so that we can
Oh,
kind of reintroduce them and remind everybody what they are? And then I'm going to have you tell people how they can reach you.
okay, great. Thank you. All right. So step 1 is about raising awareness, getting, doing some homework and learning about what are, I would think a great piece of homework to do for step 1 would be just to find out all the different stress-related diseases there are out there, from high blood pressure to allergies to asthma to chronic pain. All these things can have a stress. Oh, insomnia is 50% of all insomnia is caused by stress. So getting to know the relationship between the stress-related diseases and your symptoms, connecting the dots, that's step 1. Step 2 is problem solving. My key advice here is shifting your focus forward from being problem oriented when stress hits you by surprise to being solution oriented. Just go on Google and type in your problem. I had flying squirrels in my attic in my summer home. And let me tell you something. I went on Google, got the solution. The minute I realized I was working on a solution, and I don't have those flying squirrels, I just got this little radar thing that keeps them out. It was amazing. So step 3 is cognitive restructuring, understanding the relationship between your thinking and every single stressful event you experience. Step 4 is about mindfulness and understanding the therapeutic value of staying in the present moment. It's when we go off in the future that we get anxious, and when we go back in the past that we get angry. That was step 4. Step 5 is resilience, creating a resilience routine. Start with 5 or 10 minutes a day. Do something that makes you happy, but also either gives you a little exercise or a little stretching or a little deep breathing or a little meditation. Those are the things you should be inserting into your resilience routine. And then finally, step 6 is social support. When you need it, you want to have that social support network in place. So the best way to create that social support network is to start giving social support.
Okay. That was a perfect recap. Thank you so much. And the last thing that I want to leave everybody with, the last thought that I want to leave everyone with, is that I think one of the key things that you said that stood out to me the most is don't wait until stress feels like it's attacking you. Get ahead of it and just have this way that you manage stress to where you have self-belief and just from your own history, hey, guess what? I know stress is going to come my way, and I know I'm never going to be able to predict it, but I also know I can manage it. And I have part of this routine set up. I have the social support system. And so whatever comes my way, I have people in my corner and I have me in my corner, and I know I'm strong enough to manage it. So James, thank you so much. If people want to get a hold of you, is the easiest way to go to stressstop.com, or do you have another suggestion for them?
Or they can email me, jim@stressstop.com. And if they go to mystresstools.net, mystresstools.net, they can download a 30-day free trial of our web platform that has all these different tools and techniques that people can do, kind of like an app. So those are the 3 options. Jim@stressstop.com. Go to our website, stressstop.com, 3 S's in the middle, and or they can go to mystresstools.net and download that 30-day free trial of our web portal.
Okay, cool. That's a great opportunity for those who are listening. So thank you again, James, and thanks to all of our Strong Mind, Strong Body listeners. We will see you next time.